So I started to get into it in that second game there, but let's talk about some of the things we can take away from that kind of messy O2 League run. Um, for starters, uh, Gaze Upon Civilization definitely looks interesting, looks promising. But one of the things that I'm finding is that one of the cards that is best with Gaze Upon Civilization, in my opinion, is Get Your Wish, able to consistently find the things that you're looking for, find your Gaze Upon Civilization. I think one of the most intriguing and exciting turns that I had there was against All Who Wander when I got my second Gaze Upon Civilization into play, finding Get Your Wish on top to go find another Gaze Upon Civilization, finding another Get Your Wish on top to go find Search and Seizure. Getting multiple copies of Gaze Upon Civilization into play felt really good. Every time I played a card off the top of my library, pretty much no matter the cost of the spell, playing stuff off the top of the library just consistently felt really good. Um, but there's one major issue with Get Your Wish in this particular shell. And that is that this deck felt very reliant on Corrupt Congressman and Ballot Registrar to be able to close the distance. The closest game that I had to actually crossing the finish line was game two against All Who Wander, where having Corrupt Congressman in play at the end of that game would have killed my opponent and pushed us to a game three. But without corrupt congressmen, without a way to consistently find corrupt congressmen, that suddenly felt so much less consistent, which really stung in terms of my ability to meaningfully close the game in a lot of ways. Um, I think having a slow deck without a clear and concise plan to kill the opponent uh, was just a bad move on my part. Fully willing to acknowledge that that is not a deck error, that is a builder error. um, Corrupt Congressman and Dante's Inferno and like field test tokens are not enough of a win condition in this format. These are not colors that can meaningfully control the game hard enough to justify something going in on that. Um, so unfortunately, that really was just sort of sabotaging myself by way of pushing myself into a lane that could not do what I needed my deck to do. And that did hurt me a lot there. Beyond this, Ballot Registrar felt really good with Astrath. The one time we were able to sort of line up Registrar and Astrath, that felt very, very solid. We got some really solid mana going there. Ballot Registrar discounting the clicks did matter there in game two against All Who Wander, the one time we really got to keep Registrar in play. I think this card is very good. I think I'm comfortable sticking with saying that it was really good. I think from what I have seen from other people, Demographer may actually have outshined Registrar, unlike my expectations. Um, but I suppose the verdict is still out for now. We still are just on day one. It is 11:59 as I say this, so we are literally just about to roll into day two now on my time zone. Um, Corrupt Congressman felt pretty good. Again, like the one game we had where we almost crossed the finish line was largely thanks to Corrupt Congressman. That Torment effect is really good, and the fact that it only allows opponents to sacrifice creatures actually does meaningfully help against decks that can spam tokens and enchantments and artifacts and things that don't matter for the Congressman. I think Congressman and Ballot Registrar is phenomenal synergy, but I think it's just not consistent enough in this particular deck. Um, I was expectations met on Meeting of the Elites and Fundraiser on two. I didn't really get to line it up as much as I'd hoped, but then again, I only got to play 4 games, and all of those games had some pretty suspect opening hands, largely a consequence of me not really wanting to push any further on mulligans. Um, Not really knowing how to mulligan this deck. So Meeting of the Elites, gubernatorial fundraiser, just on a base rate, kind of met expectations but didn't exceed in any capacity. I was a little disappointed with Meeting of the Elites and Aristocracy. I think Aristocracy isn't bad by any measure, but the second line of text is a real cost. You do have to actually work to have ways of sacrificing non-land permanents. Defect can help get that done, but I don't think it's enough to meaningfully make Meeting of the Elites, like, to make aristocracy reliable in that respect. So it really is just treasure tokens that can get it done. With Fledging Vishanki, that's certainly achievable, but I think I think Meeting of the Elites is maybe not as good as I had hoped. It really truly does just sort of feel like the 2-drop that you play to get you to 4 mana on turn 3. And while it's nice to have stick around in play for Gaze Upon Civilization for approval, I think in decks that aren't running Meeting of the Elites, you may just want to run Shard instead to get the card draw immediately rather than having to jump through a bunch of hoops to maybe start getting 1 card a turn off of Aristocracy and having to jump through a hoop to play those cards. Um, I didn't really get to see Defect do anything too meaningful. It did kind of stem some aggression there for a little bit, but I never really was in a position where I could turn the creature I defected sideways. And by the time that I was starting to like actually get things going with this, it was just a little awkward. I would have loved to defect Stormscraper of Ketaphos in game 2 against All Who Wander, but I had boarded it out anticipating that it would just not be the answer that I needed. Because it looks really bad against Afara. I enchant Afara, I take Afara, it falls off when Afara stops being a creature, and I have to immediately give Afara back. But this would have been very nice on Stormscraper of Ketaphos, if nothing else. Even if, Banished to the Isle would have just removed Defect and returned the Ketaphos, returned the Stormscraper. So Defect, verdict is still out on this one. I think this could still be very good, but I don't think this was really what it needed to be. Braze is fine. Braze is Braze. I maybe wanted more copies of this in the main deck. I maybe wanted to look at Liquidate in the main deck. Liquidate looked really good out of my game 2 opponent, or my round 2 opponent. But then again, they were also on multicolor synergies, and they weren't having as hard a time getting their mana to come together. So, with some of my mana troubles, Liquidate probably would have been a liability. Dante's Inferno never got to cast. Hard to really make a judgment call, but I suspect I may be overrating this card a bit. It just kind of felt untouchable in the sense of like I couldn't really justify ever putting it on the stack. Even when I could cast it for free off Gaze Upon Civilization, I was playing 2-drops over playing Dante's Inferno, and that's not a good sign. Coup d'etat felt good when it mattered and felt terrible when it didn't, but that's kind of to be expected. Field test is field test. It's very slow, but if you can get up to it being big enough, it will just win games. The problem is that I couldn't get it up to big enough because of mana issues, so it couldn't win games. Search and Seizure felt fine. I didn't really get to do something I was really hoping to, which was get your wish for Search and Seizure on my opponent's draw step. Maybe I'll get to live that dream eventually, but I did get to cast a Search and Seizure off of Get Your Wish at least once, so that's a little bit of a prize. I have dead cards in the sideboard. Hazak Agenda, Crux were just bad. I think the coups and field tests were maybe a mistake bringing in on my round 2 game 2. I think this was just sort of a case of a perfect storm of things not lining up and the deck not lining up. My draws were not very stable. My deck building choices were suspect. And there's a lot of lessons that I can take away going into my next league run. So with all of that said, I think I have an idea for what I'm going to try for my next league run, but if there's something you would really love to see, please, by all means, let me know. I would love to get some ideas for what people are looking to see here. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the Rev chat. Take care, y'all.